We wanted it to be like if you were like walking into Pat Butcher's living room, but like in a nice way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it comes from like a place of like not very nice trauma, but essentially I want to protect everyone else from going through kind of what I and lots of other people have been through when they are getting tattooed. I think as tattooers, we have to understand that there is a power dynamic in this industry. I think that tattooers are very quick to forget the responsibility that we have to keep people safe, to keep people calm, and to give them space to be that vulnerable person.
For me, it's essentially like my lifeblood. It's something that it's an ideology that feeds into absolutely everything that I do, how I carry myself as a person, my relationships, my friendships, my work, my creativity. Like it is all somehow comes back to how I believe like all genders should be equal in this world. The number one thing, and we actually do try and like instill this in the people that work with us here, is like ultimately protecting your mental health and avoiding burnout is the most important thing you can do. I'm so grateful that everything that when I fantasized about being a tattooist, you know, when I decided that that's what I wanted my life to be, I think I've pretty much achieved, you know, in terms of the kind of work that I'm doing, the kind of clients that I attract, and the kind of impact that we're having. Like it's everything that I hoped that we could create. Personal accountability, responsibility to the community is what's going to make the change happen.
Hello and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Lloyd and this is the 21st Century Tattoo. Cool. Guys, how are we doing? George, Dolly, thank you so much for opening up on a Sunday. Appreciate that.
All right.
Let's talk about the space first of all. I mean, you really, the one thing when you think of Dollhouse, you've really managed to create this like unique and signature look, you know, very pink. It's got a cool aesthetic and I've seen you bring that with you to like conventions and stuff. Mm-hmm. I guess what I'd love to know, talk me through like the work that's gone into this, like from opening it back in 2020.
Because the phrase that comes to mind is like, we said that we wanted it to be like if you were like walking into Pat Butcher's living room, but like in a nice way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was kind of the general accidental theme. The
warm colours essentially help us give it like that welcoming vibe that we really wanted. Like we're really not a fan of like super sterile looking, you know, very, very plain tattoo shops. It's just not, it's not our personal aesthetic and it's not the kind of environment that we wanted to create for the customers. So like we always joke as well that Dolly and I have the same brain, especially when it comes to aesthetics. So there was literally nothing. It's almost like we just knew that this was how we wanted the shop to look without even having to discuss it.
Yeah, there didn't even need to be a discussion.
No,
it was just
pink has always been a thing for both of us because it's just such a welcoming, it's a happy colour, you know, so it's like, well, what better to kind of have around you when you're working than something that just brings you a lot of joy, basically.
Yeah, that's what I love about going around to everyone's spaces is like, it's like almost like an outward sign of like how they are.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we spend so much time here. It's just like an extension of our home and we both rent. So I'm like, I can't do anything to my actual home. So this is where I just unleash like everything that I want. Like. This is what my own home would look like if I was allowed to.
Yeah. It's nice. It's got like, but then there's almost quite like traditional elements as well. You've got some real vintage sort of furnishings and stuff going on.
I've always, when I was growing up and getting tattooed, you know, when I was a baby, I always loved walking to tattoo shops and just seeing people's personality, even if it was just like in their stations, what they got, their trinkets, their knickknacks. Yeah. Because it immediately tells you what that tattoo is about, you know, through their visual identity. And I think the shop is just a massive extension of that for us.
Yeah. And it's nice for everyone that works here as well to be able to like do what they want with their station and stuff instead of kind of everyone having rules and not being able to put things up. Like when you're in your little area, you can do what you want.
Area, your creative space. You know?
Yeah, because you spend so much time there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Let's talk about you guys as well. How and where did you first meet?
How did we first meet? I'll tell the story of how I first met. So I met Dolly when I was actually a journalist. I was working for MTV, but living in Brighton. And I love this city so much, and I was using my job at MTV to kind of amplify a lot of things I loved about Brighton, the bands that were coming out of it, the cool tattoo shops. And Dolly was working at a new tattoo shop that had just opened that was also a nail salon. It was very like trendy at the time, like 11 years ago.
What a time that was.
And so basically I went to like review the shop for an article, and Dolly was assigned to tattoo me as part of the article. We didn't know each other. She gave me a quite cringy of my choosing Fall Out Boy tattoo, which I still love because it just reminds me of the day that we met. And we just really hit it off. I did that classic thing of like recommending her to all of my friends. We all went to get tattooed by her and became friends. And that's that, the rest is history basically. And then obviously I started tattooing later and our paths kind of kept interweaving over the course of a decade.
Yeah, we ended up living opposite each other for 4 years.
Yeah, we lived on the same street.
Oh man, some things are meant to be.
Yeah, we've
basically
always
my family,
been like very kind of in sync, even when we weren't like super close.
Yeah.
And then we're just stuck with each other.
Can't get rid of them.
Yeah, sweet. You've got a great relationship. You can see that straight away. And like obviously a lot in common. You mentioned this studio itself being like it's a feminist run studio.
Yeah.
I guess I'd love to maybe ask you like, what does feminism mean to you both?
I think it means something like different for both of us, which is interesting. Even though we're both sort of steadfast.
Absolutely. I mean,
feminism.
For me, it's essentially like my lifeblood. It's something that it's an ideology that feeds into absolutely everything that I do, how I carry myself as a person, my relationships, my friendships, my work, my creativity. Like it is all somehow comes back to how I believe like all genders should be equal in this world and how people should treat each other. So I started calling myself a feminist about 10 years ago in my mid-20s. And I've definitely evolved a lot in my learning. I've done a lot of feminist reading. And I think coming into any kind of environment, especially tattooing, which is very patriarchal, and kind of being able to enact change is like super, super important to me, like change for the better, positive change. But to me, feminism essentially is just treating other people with decency and kind of getting rid of a lot of very outdated ideas in the world, not just in tattooing. So it's like speaking out for things that change. Because my mantra is kind of like, if I don't say something or do something, it won't get any better for like the next generation of people. Okay. And so I kind of feel like I always owe it to like my future sisters, daughters, whatever, not just women, but everyone to actually make my tiny little sliver of difference in the world. That's what feminism means to me.
Nice.
Yeah, I feel like I'm ultimately same in that it all comes down to sort of equality. But for me, I come from a background of lots of sort of chauvinism and stuff like that. So I grew up always kind of feeling a lot smaller because I was a woman. And as I got older, I worked in fashion where like it's kind of seen as a good thing. And then I got into tattooing and got like smacked in the face with this like, women aren't real tattooers. We've got no place in the industry. And I mean, that was 12 years ago. And I think that's kind of when I like first really like lent into my feminism.
Well, just touching on that point there then, because I wanted to ask you about this. Obviously, you've been tattooing 12 years.
Yes.
In the grand scheme, it doesn't seem a lot, but I feel like the industry has developed massively in that amount of time. Yeah. I guess what I'd love to ask you is really what was your entry into the industry like back then?
So here come horror stories.
Okay. No.
Spill.
So I was working in fashion, loved my job, was having the time of my life, got made redundant, was very, very sad. And literally just didn't know what to do with my life. And my dad very flippantly went, if you never want to get made redundant again, you should just work for yourself. And I was like, I have no life skills. I am a 20-year-old.
That's the truth, though.
Yeah. And I was very lucky that a friend of mine from home was already a tattoo artist, and he opened up his own shop and quite frankly wasn't doing a very good job and asked me to kind of go in and help with like the more businessy side of things, because that was my strength working in retail. And I sort of did that, and then he was like, well, you can draw, so why don't you just tattoo? And then he taught me, and then it all went wrong. And then I moved here.
Okay.
And then kind of really ended up sort of reteaching myself and wiggling around Brighton.
So there wasn't like a, I want to be a tattoo artist. It was more the concept of I want to work for myself.
Yeah. And like, it's difficult because it had never occurred to me that I could be a tattooist, because I'd only ever known male tattooists. And I also only really knew like tattooed men. Like I was quite heavily tattooed at the time.
Say, how many tattoos had you? You'd already started your sort of tattoo journey at that point.
Oh, right, probably, okay, yeah. And like quite a few like random terrible ones on my legs. So yeah, like I was really into tattoos, but it just hadn't occurred to me that like I could do it because I'd never been like given an example. And then I found people like Gwen Douglas and Kim Ann, and then I was like, oh my God, these people exist. Like they don't exist here, but they do exist.
Yeah, I was going to say, was there anyone maybe that you were kind of like looking up to in the industry and thinking, well, it's doable?
Angelique,
massive inspiration for
for me, like Gwen Douglas was sort of, she'll kill me for saying this because I'll make her sound old, but like she was sort of the reason that I got into tattooing. So.
What was it, do you think, that was maybe kind of holding women back from kind of getting like really trying to push themselves in the industry?
There wasn't the space for us. Like the shops were not environments that were comfortable for women to be in, even as a client, even as a female client walking into tattoo shops when I was sort of 18, 19, the way tattooers would speak to me, even when I was a client. And looking back now, I'm like, holy shit, like that's really revolting. Like, and I just kind of accepted it as, well, this is the world that I'm entering their world, was how it felt, you know. And I always felt like a weirdo as a girl trying to get tattooed, you know. Not in every shop, but definitely in like, you know, my local shop where I first went to get it. Weirdly, my first tattoo was by a young woman in Camden, in just like one of the kind of tourist shops that they've got there, like underneath the clothes shops.
Yeah, I know.
And I don't know whether that might have left like a bit of a lasting impression, because she was lovely, you know, she was really, really friendly. It was a 5-minute little MySpace star, you know, but it was just like a nice first experience. So she was very cool. I don't know what her name was, but
I mean,
yeah, it definitely for, you know, I'm a few years older than Dolly, but like when we were getting tattooed in the early 2000s, it definitely felt like a boy's world, a man's world.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I had my first tattoo in a shop in North London by Big Willie of Big Willies.
Right.
And I know it's this awful stereotype, but he was quite literally a bearded biker with a leather waistcoat. Yeah. And he was massive, and I was 18 and I was terrified. I also really wanted to wind up my mum, so I just did it. But like now I'm like, as if I put myself in as like as a child, essentially, to put myself in like a situation where I felt so uncomfortable and I just did it anyway is kind of mad. And I would like, the idea of anyone walking in here and feeling that way makes me so scared.
Oh, yeah. In a tattoo shop, or a tattooer that I won't name, I was a regular client at this shop. You know, again, this is like 10, 12 years ago. And a man that worked there that I hadn't been tattooed by felt it was okay to across the shop say to me, oh, when are you going to give me a bit of your skin? Which is just horrible on so many levels. Like, yeah,
I can see, like, obviously I've had a completely different experience being a male, and I haven't been in the industry as long. But yeah, I mean, I would hope that it isn't as much like that nowadays.
It feels like it's changing.
It does feel like it's changing.
Definitely. I was going to say, has it changed? Is it in the process of changing? And what really have you noticed like massively changed in the industry over that time?
So much. Like even so I've been tattooing 7 years as of sort of this month, and it just feels like technologically so much has changed. You know, I started out with coil machines, as I think a lot of people still do to an extent, but like they're very much dying out. And, you know, so the technology and the equipment that we're using is evolving at like this madly rapid pace. Yeah. And then, I think attitudes and obviously social media plays a huge part in that. And that I definitely started tattooing just when kind of the Instagram boom was happening, and tattooers were becoming these huge figures on these platforms that we'd never had like such public access to the industry before, which obviously made it great for clients because there was just so much more information and resource and inspiration for them to access. But
that's it. It's information.
The industry has opened up in a way that I don't think anyone could have predicted. And with that, you've seen like social change as part of that as well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It means that you kind of aren't falling into the trap of just having to go to your local studio and deal with whatever.
Yeah. So when I started tattooing, that was the thing. So Instagram didn't exist when I started tattooing. And you just worked in your local shop. You had to be able to do a bit of everything, and you relied on walk-ins. Yeah. And in the time that I've been tattooing, now everyone sort of seems to have like a specialist style and stuff like that, which like wasn't which wasn't an option for me when I started tattooing. I had to be able to say yes to anything that came in the door. And then about sort of 6 years in, stuff started changing, and I could finally like kind of hone in on like what I really wanted to do. But now it seems like most people are coming into the industry already knowing how they want to tattoo. Yeah. And
there's
because
a lot more
of things like social media, people can find it and come here and get it, whereas that just wasn't
Yeah, I remember being 18, and I don't know how old you are, but like when I was trying to research tattoos when I was 18, there was a website called BMEzine, Body Modification Ezine, which was one of those old websites where it took like ages for like the pictures to load.
Oh yeah,
do you know what I
dial-up.
mean? And that was on dial-up internet as well. Like I'm making us look like actual antiques here, but you know,
it's fine.
No, I remember.
But yeah, that was one of the only like internet resources that there was for any kind of like body. I remember looking at the actual body mod section of the website and being like, ooh.
Oh my God, if you look back at some like real old tattoo magazines.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Or magazines,
Crazy.
obviously, which were obviously, even the magazines themselves back in the day were not designed for women readers. You know, they always had like a sexy babe on the front, and like it wasn't exactly like showing me the kind of things that I wanted to see or wanted to find out about in tattooing.
Yeah.
I mean, this is so cringe, but like when I started tattooing, it was when like Miami Ink and London Ink and all that was on the telly. Well. So, and now when people are like, oh, you're like Kat Von D because you do tattoos and you've got black hair, and I'm like, no.
Kat Von D was like the only thing that my parents could reference when I started tattooing. They were like, oh, are you going to be like her?
Yeah, and I'm like, no, I'm probably not going to be on the telly making millions.
Although it's still very good to see a woman pushing it.
She paved the way. She's lost the plot now, bless her, but like she opened a lot of doors for women.
Like, and that was another thing that made me kind of go, okay, maybe I can do this. But that was really my basis for like research and like how shops should work and that sort of thing, because we just didn't have access to that information. We didn't know what we should be looking for. And now, like, I feel like, I mean, we definitely do it, and lots of tattooers are speaking very publicly about what you should look for in a tattoo artist, like from a personality basis and a style basis. I feel like, you know, oh my God, if we'd had that knowledge, most of my body wouldn't be blacked out. Let's just say that.
I'm a hodgepodge of styles as well.
It's crazy. But then, I mean, I've got some horrendous ones. And I guess it's all like a learning curve, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
For sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about tattooing anyway. I guess that's why we're here. Right, quick one about Ghost Cartridge, the Hex carts. Now, these are the 3rd generation Ghost Cartridge. Best-selling as well. Instantly recognisable, bright green. Also the first in the UK to be introduced with the silicone foregrip system. First of all, Dolly, I'd love to just have a chat about your style. I mean, you describe your style as obnoxious girly shit, which I love. Talk to me a little bit about kind of how you landed on creating that style. Have you always like lent towards that, and is that what you were kind of creating from the very beginning? Yeah,
like it's always what I knew I wanted to do. I remember when I was an apprentice, a friend of mine very kindly let me do like a zombie My Little Pony on them, and it was like one of the first tattoos I ever did. Obviously, it was terrible. But I was like, this is actually really fun. Like blending lots of colour is fun and using bold lines. And so when I got into tattooing, I was obsessed with like the super traditional like Solar Jerry stuff. And I had a very traditional apprenticeship that was, if you can't do that, you shouldn't be tattooing.
Yeah.
And actually, so my style is kind of a mixture of that, in that it's like bold lines, whip shading, solid colour. But it's just what I'm interested in. So like I'm a 90s kid. I was literally born in 1990. So I grew up being obsessed with like Barbie and My Little Pony and Disney. And I just feel like if you tattoo stuff that you're interested in, same as Georgina, you attract your people, which means I never have a bad time tattooing anyone. Because if they're getting tattooed by me, chances are I've got something in common with them. So like if I'm doing a Disney tattoo on someone, I can spend 3 hours talking about Disney, and it just makes every day super like enjoyable.
I can't. They've only done it once, and I will only allow it once. I'm not a Disney person at all.
Love that.
One time, but it was a long afternoon. Let me tell you.
It's so true. It's a very interesting concept, and one I hadn't really thought of, but it makes perfect sense. You know, like your clients are coming to for that thing, that subject matter, because that's what they're really into. If that's and you also, you know what I mean, you're recreating work that you're interested in creating. You're not just doing it because it's trendy or whatever. What about yourself? So kind of botanical illustration kind of reference. Talk to me about a lot of freehand stuff as well. I
pretty much only tattoo freehand, which has been a really nice natural evolution of how I worked. I used to work with stencils and pre-drawing, but I really fucking hate homework. and I'm really bad at it, like doing it, because I'm a very busy person that's got a lot going on.
Just do it on the day.
I do on the day. If I do like to draw on the day if I have to pre-draw, but ultimately the freehanding didn't just come about because of that. It became a thing because a lot of my work is very specifically tailored to the shape of the body part that I'm tattooing. Even if it's just on an arm, to me, I can see like the muscles and the sinews and kind of like the shape of someone's actual physique, and I really love like placement of tattoos. So I think when you freehand and you draw it on, you know, you're factoring in how it actually is sitting on the body, like even to more of an extent than someone when you're stenciling. I'm not saying you don't do that when you stencil, but like you have the flexibility to go, oh, actually like a leaf would look really great there, kind of like just kind of complementing the overall composition.
Yeah, you're doing it a bit more on the fly, aren't you?
It also helps because I'm a massive perfectionist. I'm anxious as most of us are. And I found that when I started freehanding, I had to trust myself. So it wasn't overthinking the drawing. It was, I know I can do this. I know I can draw this plant or this flower or whatever, and I can make it look good on this client. And I can't spend all day pre-drawing a design, which is what I used to do. You know, if I had like 5 for the week, I would draw 1, and because I'd spend all day on it. And that ultimately is not an effective way of working as a tattooer. So freehanding made me trust myself. And I really like how it comes out on the body. And it's honestly like it feels like the most respectful and wonderful experience to have a client come in and basically go, okay, either like just draw what you want, which I get quite a lot now, which is mind-blowing, or, you know, trusting me to kind of see how it's going to work on them, and working with them as well. I enjoy the collaborative element of, you know, anything that they want to change on the design, they tell me. Not that happens a lot, but like we kind of work on it together, and it feels like they're going to get the best possible outcome. Yeah, I
like working that way. I think that's what tattooing really should be. It's not just sit down, shut up, that's what you're having.
No, the old slap it on approach, which is again something that I think Dolly and I both experienced when we were younger from as being clients, you know, is how you end up with people leaving a shop going, yeah, thanks, and then walking out and immediately feeling heartbroken. And I would hate to know that was how my clients felt.
Dolly, is that how you work best as well? Or how do you kind of...
Yeah, it's difficult because a lot of my stuff is like, there's not much wiggle room. Like if you come to me asking for an Aristocats tattoo, there's only so many ways you can do an Aristocats tattoo. So when it's stuff like that, then genuine, and like obviously my hearts are very symmetrical. So I stencil stuff like that. But again, when it comes to more sort of organic stuff, so when I'm doing like floral stuff, I do try and freehand, even if I'm stenciling a bit of it, and then I will like tweak it and change it. Because I think when it's something, I hate using the word organic because it makes it sound like a wanker, but when
thing on a natural body, you know.
Yeah, when you are tattooing something organic, the best way to make it work on someone's shape is to draw it on.
And also people come to you for your Disney and your Ghibli, they come to you specifically for that. So
yeah, and they want it to look like a sticker.
They know that's what the design's going to be. You know?
Sure.
Yeah, so yeah, there doesn't tend to be like, I very rarely get people that ask me to sort of redraw stuff because they
want your stuff.
Not much wiggle room when it comes to stuff like that. But when it's more sort of custom and less specific, I do prefer to work in sort of like a collaborative space with my client, because I just hate the idea of someone, just coming in, sitting down, like on a conveyor belt, and then
just churning them out. Yeah, for sure. I think that's so important. It's all about the experience. That's what I'm really trying to like real focus on at my place as well. It's not just right, let's see how many we can get done in one day. It's creating one whole like experience for the customer. A question I'd love to ask you both, really: who or what is your biggest inspiration when it comes to tattooing?
Buffy. No.
I mean,
not a far cry. For me, it's just nostalgia. Like anything, like when I do the tattoos that I do, I want people to kind of look at them and like laugh and have like a happy memory. And like, even if it's like kind of a sad tattoo, like a memorial tattoo or something, I want it to like bring joy to that person. Like I don't want people to look at stuff and it make them feel kind of bad or sad or anything like that. So for me, like if you can like tap into like a happy memory and get it tattooed on you, which is a lot of the case for sort of 90s pop culture reference, that like you're never going to look at like a Mean Girls tattoo and go, oh, that was a shit life choice, wasn't it? So for me, it's just about like, you're never going to feel bad looking at like a glittery Disney thing, and it's just about making people happy. People take tattooing so seriously. Like, I'm like, and I get it. Like when I started getting tattooed, it was this like
deep and meaningful.
Yeah, deep and meaningful. Everything had to like have a meaning attached to it, and it wasn't very fun. And I think sadly that stems from kind of this like male ego part of the industry where like the more tattoos you got, the harder you were.
Status thing, yeah.
Yeah, and I think now tattooing is so much more socially acceptable, and also people get into tattooing with the foresight that they might end up being a heavily tattooed person. So I think people that kind of collect and stuff, the memory kind of comes after. So if I can do a tattoo on someone and in 10 years' time, they remember the person that did it, which I certainly don't for a lot of mine. Yeah. But also they remember being at the dollhouse and having a nice experience and stuff. To me, that's really, really important.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm going to say like a who and a what, if that makes sense.
Of course.
Maybe a few tangents. I'm very, very grateful to the women pioneers in tattooing, not just Kat Von D, like way before that. Before I even started tattooing as an apprentice, I read a book called Bodies of Subversion, and I actually recommend it to like any clients that ever vaguely mention they might want to get into the industry or whatever, just because this book blew my mind, and I think it should be recommended reading for anyone in the industry now. And it just documents basically the very earliest pioneers, both tattooed women, you know, that were part of like the freak shows and all that kind of thing, and also like there was a big movement of women in the 70s that were doing very, very creative tattooing, very feminine tattooing, like kind of branched out, doing their own thing. Yeah. And that super inspired me, like just to think, okay, there is room to carve out your own space in this world.
Oh, well, absolutely.
So that was a huge kind of starting inspiration for me. There were some women that I was getting tattooed by at the time. Emily Malice was someone that I was getting tattooed by pretty regularly when I started tattooing, and seeing her way of like carving out her own niche in the industry, like I found very inspiring. But in terms of like day to day, this is going to sound cheese on toast, but I'm going to say my clients are my biggest inspiration, just because like the relationships that I forged through tattooing, I'm not saying like outside of the studio, I mean like literally the day to day experience of having that amazing connection with someone that trusts you to put a design on their body that they are going to wear for the rest of their life, and it's going to change their appearance like irrevocably, especially people that are coming for like chest pieces or back pieces, or you know the real like game changing ones that when you look in the mirror you go, okay, I look different now. Yeah. That kind of mutual respect to me every day, I'm absolutely buzzing. Like I love it so much. Yeah. And that's what keeps me going. Like when on days when tattooing is hard, like all it takes is just to have one of my wonderful regular clients come in, have a great conversation, have an amazing creative experience with them, and I go, this is why we do it. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. Yeah. It is, it's.
So that was very fromage.
It's good. I love it.
I try not to think about that too much because
she gets emotional. And
I know. When you actually think about what you're doing,
it blows your mind.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But it's like it's like the best job in the world, though. It really is. Yeah. I guess I'd wanted to ask you as well, your journey into the industry. You were a former music journalist. Am I right?
I've been all over the place, mate.
Fine. So don't judge me on my journalism here. But
no, you're doing great. You're smashing it.
But yeah, no, I think it's great. What I want to know then really kind of was that the love, like writing. I know you do a lot of writing now still, and kind of where tattooing started and that ended.
I'm definitely a bit of a hybrid creative person. And so I've had a few different lives, a few different careers. I started out similar to Dolly, again in our kind of weird in syncness, in fashion. Like after I graduated with journalism degree, I started out in fashion. That industry is hella toxic, so I quickly switched over to music because that's probably like again one of my lifebloods.
Just a little less toxic.
A little less toxic. Still a very patriarchal industry, so I had to like push my way into it, and that's also why I go by George a lot, because I used to tell people that my name was George when I was going to interview a band, so they would expect a man to turn up and they'd be kind of looking over my shoulder like waiting for the male journalist to arrive, which was always quite funny. Anyway, so I was doing that, but all the while this is sort of like my early 20s, obviously all the while I was getting tattooed. Like being in tattoo shops was just a regular thing for me. As soon as I was earning a salary, basically, I was getting tattooed all the time. So I loved the environment of being in there, but it wasn't something that I was considering at all. I'd done an art foundation degree, like just in between all of that happening. So drawing and aesthetics and design was always a big part of my life anyway, but it wasn't like my main focus at that time. And then essentially I got really, really burnt out by the London media industry. Like I was progressing really, really far in my career. I was an editor at MTV, overseeing like the UK and Europe websites, which at 26 was pretty mental. Like I had no idea like how that had even happened. I'd achieved a lot of like my big goals in that industry, like the people that I wanted to interview, the kind of, again, the changes that I wanted to make in that industry happen. And yeah, I just needed to get the hell out of London, the hell out of that whole world, because it's very, very intense. And again, similar to Dolly, wanted to be self-employed. Knew that I loved the tattooing kind of like culture, and just kind of went, I'm very stubborn. And when I decide that I'm going to do something, I'm just like, well, that's what I'm going to do. Yeah. So it was quite a quick transition between, I'm getting out of London, I'm getting out of the industry, I'm going to work my ass off, start drawing again. I was drawing constantly. I got married on my honeymoon. I was drawing
commitment.
Yeah. I'm just like very single-minded when it comes to this kind of stuff. Got the first apprenticeship that I could, had a horrible time, as most of us do. And that rest is history, basically.
Yeah.
Like it was quite a dramatic life change, but I knew I wanted to have a job where I was in control of my own time, in control of my own money, and was doing something creative every day. But it's, 7 years later, I've managed to balance it so that now, yes, I do have time for my writing as well. And I would say actually my life is a pretty neat, like 50-50 split between the two, which makes my brain very happy.
Yeah.
To say. I need both elements of them happening to feel kind of content and fulfilled.
Yeah.
So yeah.
In terms of actually like topics and stuff that you like to cover, what are those kind of main focuses when it comes to your writing?
When it comes to my writing, I kind of jokingly say that I write about, the general millennial experience of being a woman. A lot of my work is quite rooted in nostalgia. So I do talk about kind of like the early 2000s and like that kind of peak coming of age time for me, which was very formative for all of us. Feminism definitely leads into and factors into everything that I write. A lot of dark humor, a lot of morbidity. I'm quite a realist these days. So yeah, I do a bit of poetry, a bit of essays. I'm quite very interested in internet culture and how that shaped us as a generation. And then kind of doing
it's nice. I've seen
bits.
bits and pieces kind of on socials. It's cool. I like it. Don't forget to head over to Instagram or YouTube, get in the comment section and let me know who you want to hear from in the next episode. We touched on it very briefly there, but talking about just getting into the industry and the apprenticeship. I know you mentioned that you had quite a traditional apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Did you, how long did that kind of last? And what was that journey from maybe then to now?
Mine was a year of just not very funness, and it sounds all very romantic saying you like gave up your whole life to do your apprenticeship, but ultimately I was working like 2 jobs and doing a full-time apprenticeship. So I was doing like a delivery shift at River Island, and then I was working all day at a tow shop, and then doing a bar shift in the evening, like all week. Gave up my flat, moved back in with my parents. It was a whole thing. And
you always find you work all of those jobs, and I was still scraping pennies together.
I've never had less money in my life, because every bit of money I was getting from like a real job was going on like my first time machine and all of that stuff. So I did that for about a year. It wasn't very fun, and actually in hindsight there wasn't much tattooing going on. Like I was cleaning my mentor's car in the snow just so I could like prove that I was committed to the lifestyle. Like, it wasn't the most fun. And then essentially I kind of got to a point where I was sort of more in demand than he was, which he obviously didn't like. And he said, I was here for a weekend, and he said, you've got no job to come home to. And I went, all right. And I just stayed. So that's how I moved to Brighton. And I was very lucky that I ended up just messaging someone on Facebook asking if he could give me a job. And God bless him, he did. And he's great, and we're still friends. And that's kind of how I stayed. But then I essentially had to teach myself in like my first kind of year here how to do like a not shit tattoo. And like, because the competition here is outrageous. When you go from like a tiny town in North London where there's not much competition and you're in a street shop, to moving to a town where there's a tattoo studio every other shop.
Yeah, for sure.
You quickly have to get on your feet, and you have to get good. And so I just we
feel there's like a massive pressure there, and almost to kind of find your niche.
It's a good thing though. It means that you have to up our game.
My first 2 years here, I worked 7 days a week, and I was not okay, but I worked really hard, and I hustled, and I learned how to tattoo. And now we're here.
I guess I'd like to ask you maybe a bit of a deep one, but on your journey, maybe could you pinpoint one moment that maybe in hindsight maybe turned out to be a mistake or you regret? Is there anything that you'd maybe would have done differently looking back? I know you can't regret anything, but it's always quite good to...
I'll give it a good go.
Yeah.
I actually, do you know what? I actually don't think I would when we're talking about kind of shop choices and stuff like that, because all of the shops that I worked in, granted, a lot of them I did not have a very nice time. But they taught me how I don't want my shop to be.
They've shaped us as experiences.
Also, they've now put me in a situation where I can shout it from the rooftops and kind of
put it into
guide.
practice.
I don't want to say the next generation because I sound like an old woman, but like I can guide the next generation to what they should and shouldn't put up with, and kind of how to create their own boundaries that I just did not have.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing, I'm really sorry, but the only thing I regret is dating another tower.
Oh yeah, we always tell, like, especially like the younger people that work here, we're always like, do not do that. Like, do you know what I mean? Maybe because it's just like having two creative, like very specific creative minds in one house.
What was the most difficult aspect of dating someone who does the same?
I mean, he just wasn't very nice, but it's really hard to be with someone where, especially if you're at quite different points in your career where. So he was an apprentice, so it kind of meant that I was like flying and he was sort of feeling bad about it. And like, I feel like that's quite common when you're like with another creative person. So it can be really good in that obviously you can like fuel each other's creative fire a lot of the time. But if one of you is feeling super creative and one of you's in a bit of a lull, it ends up real bad, real fast.
Is there a bit of resentment or whatever?
Yeah. So I personally would advise against it.
Okay.
But as far as like shop choices and career choices and stuff go, as much as it was a shit show, I don't think I'd change it.
Yeah. I think kind of similar, but not like one of the only things I regret, even though I don't think I could have probably done anything about it, like it was sort of a impossible situation, is when because I came into the industry a bit later. Obviously I was 30 by the time I started doing my first tattoo, which is actually quite late in the grand scheme of things. At which point, I had a pretty well-formed idea of who I was and what I stood for. But then I was suddenly down, right at the bottom, as you have to start when you start tattooing. And I was very beholden to the very misogynistic, sexist, racist, horrible people that I was working for. And because I felt like, it is such a privilege to get into this industry, and not all of us get that opportunity. I was so scared of losing the opportunity that basically I kept stum for like a year, probably 2, 3, 4 years, if I really am honest with myself. Maybe even until Dolly and I started the Dollhouse.
Okay.
Up until that point, when I worked in somebody else's shop, you always had this back of your mind idea that, unfortunately, because of the nature of being self-employed in a tattoo shop where there's no contracts, there's no accountability, you say the wrong thing or you stand up for something that you see is not right, and they can just be like, well, get fucked then. Do you know what I mean? Sorry, I'm swearing so much.
No, it doesn't matter at all.
Doesn't matter. Okay.
It's quite an interesting concept, isn't it?
I had to bite my tongue
weird.
a lot, and that felt very, very uncomfortable, especially in my apprenticeship. Like I literally just had to not say anything until the day that a friend, the other woman that I worked with there, we both decided to leave at the same time. Just literally do a bunk and like get out.
I think that's quite common in shops where like one
not a
person
safe
kind
situation.
of like half speaks up and then the other person goes like, no, I've got you. We can both do this together. And I think like,
you find that sometimes you can see, because I've worked in studios before and it's almost like 2 people always leave at once.
Yeah. Quite often, because then alliances are formed, or like people can kind of see how they maybe want to do things differently. And if a shop environment is toxic enough that people want to leave, then probably more than one person wants to go. Do you know what I mean? Or it can just be that people want to go and like collaborate like we did. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think that like,
it might not always be the shop fault either.
No, it might not, but that's what I mean. Like people leave because they've made friends and they want to do something with that friend.
Yeah, I was very similar in like, I just didn't know that I had a voice for quite a long time. But then when you start speaking up, people go like, who the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing here? Like, because they're so not used to it and they don't expect it. So then when we started kind of going like, actually, hey guys, like stuff needs to change, and they're like, where have you been? Like, you've been saying nothing
we
for this
laugh
entire
about
time.
How long it took us to start the dollhouse. Literally, as soon as we started doing it, the first day that we started doing it, we were like, why the fuck have we not done this sooner?
I remember painting a wall pink and being like, if we didn't do this
we're home.
5 years ago.
I mean?
Yeah, nice. Oh, it's good. It's good that you kind of got to that point now. You have to go through it all, don't you?
You do, and as I say, it shaped us and built us into the people that we are today.
Yeah, and I do think it is changing. Like, I feel like a lot of the people that we have working here have kind of had like a small stumble and then gone, well, actually, this isn't what I should be putting up with. Yeah. And they actually get out quite quickly and change it up. Whereas, you know, for us, we were in something for years before we kind of went, oh, actually, this is not fun.
One piece of advice then that you would give to someone starting out in the industry now this year, maybe even particularly aimed at a female getting into the industry, what would that piece of advice be?
I think the number one thing, and we actually do try and like instill this in the people that work with us here, is like ultimately protecting your mental health and avoiding burnout is the most important thing you can do. Because like Dolly said, there is the temptation and the sort of subconscious expectation for young tattooers or new tattooers that you have to like kill yourself in order to make it. And yes, you do have to work really, really fucking hard, and you do have to give it, quote unquote, your everything, but you've got to preserve a little bit of your sanity, energy, time, breathing space, because otherwise you're going to get ill, you're going to break your body, you're going to fuck your mind up. Like, you have, like, we do try and instill like work life boundaries for everybody, because otherwise, the temptation to just be like constantly accessible by clients, constantly like on call to your studio. Like, everyone does need to have a life outside of tattooing, even if it is just time to eat, sleep, you know, rest, basically. I know it sounds kind of counterproductive, but I think you're not going to be able to give it your all unless you're also like looking after yourself. So, I think it's important to have those kind of protective measures in place, basically, however that looks to you.
But yeah, I guess how do you even do that though? Because I know just from personal experience, I struggle with that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Owning a studio.
You have to be strict about it.
It's hard when it's like
you take
what you love.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
It's like I think I'm just the sort of person where I've got quite an obsessive attitude anyway. You take it home with you. It feels like maybe this industry in particular, I know self-employed people in general, but tattooing, you particularly do take that home with you.
I think it's a lifestyle. Like, that's kind of the tricky, and it's something that I really struggle with, and you are much better at than I am. Whereas like for me, like tattooing is my hobby, and like, so I don't have something outside of my job that is like a hobby that I just enjoy for recreational purposes. Like, I'm like, this is my whole life. And I've had to, like, because I can't find anything that I love as much as tattooing from like a fun point of view, I'm just doing like not fun stuff. So I've got other stuff to like, I go to the gym all the time. And it's not stuff that like I love doing, but it's something that isn't my job and it's something that means I can't be doing my job.
You've carved out that space to do that as
and
well,
I'm doing something that is not
important.
tattooing. So even if it's like not something like another hobby or like another interest or like another creative outlet, just doing something that literally means you can't be on your phone, you can't be doing emails, like just something that takes your brain away from tattooing is really useful.
100. Well, I was actually going to ask you that, like what is life like for you both outside of tattooing, you know?
I have a 6-month-old dog and a gym membership, and that's that's literally it. I got a puppy not that long ago and I can't remember doing anything apart from making sure he's not eating something.
I remember that stage. It's mad though. You almost think like, I can't remember what life was like before the dog.
No, I actually don't really remember a life pre-Dallas, but he's hard work. He just takes up literally all of my time. He's a whippet and he's chaos.
Yeah. You went for the right breed then.
Yeah, well, I posted a video of him yesterday.
Oh my God.
My friend messaged me like, have you sped this up? And I was like, no, my
just
friend.
Doing laps,
real time.
Jokes. That is cool.
Yeah, he's a lot. So yeah, that's pretty much my life outside of work at the moment.
Yeah. It's just, it is like you say, it's just finding an escape.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
we try and make time, like for each other.
We
like
do
that's
have to
something-
preserve our social friendship as opposed to just being business partners. So
yeah,
that's
so
a
we're
really
sort
nice
of like,
thing.
right, no business chat today. We're like going shopping.
We actually have two separate WhatsApp chats. We have one that's called Shop Chat and one that's just
like
mine
a
and Dolly's
normal
chat, so that we keep them separate,
Yeah.
basically.
Nice.
Which is
We love a
ridiculous
boundary.
because it's still the same message coming to the same phone, but like it just feels different, if that makes sense.
Yeah, but it's probably important to do that, you know, like, so you kind of aren't like, what's the word? Yeah, just amalgamating to work with kind of.
Yeah, obviously owning
That's
a
gonna
business
happen
with
to
your
an
best
extent.
mate is sick, but it does mean that, you know, you have to be really careful not to like sacrifice 10 years worth of friendship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, this is going to be a good time, I think, for me to give you the question left for you from the previous guest. I like this one. It's nice.
But the apprentice version of you, be proud of the artist you are today.
I mean, fuck yes.
I mean, yeah, she would be in disbelief, but yes, she.
We started
she
from the
would be
bottom and
really
we're here.
proud.
Do you know what I mean? Like, this is every day, every time I walk into this shop, I'm like, yes, because it's been a hard fought battle and it's been hard won to be at the point that we're both at. And I'm so fucking proud of this shop. I'm so fucking proud of us for like getting to this point. I'm so grateful that everything that when I fantasized about being a tattooist, you know, when I decided that that's what I wanted my life to be, I think I've pretty much achieved, you know, in terms of the kind of work that I'm doing, the kind of clients that I attract, and the kind of impact that we're having. Like, it's everything that I hoped that we could create and I could create. So yeah, I'm pretty stoked, and I think it's really nice to feel that way after a lot of hard work and suffering in order to get here, basically.
So you should.
Yeah, I mean, all of that, and also my mum stopped asking me when I'm going to get a real job. So I'm like, she's finally realised this is like a feasible career.
nice.
My dad is obsessed with our shop's Google reviews.
Oh my God,
it's so
it's the
funny
best. It's
because
the
we've got
best.
all 5 stars, which is lovely, and like I think there's about 65
Yeah,
reviews
and what I will
on
say
there.
is really nice.
He just
about
goes and
them.
reads them. He goes and checks them all the time. He's like, oh
He's
my
the
God.
cutest.
Oh, nice. That's
He's
good.
the
That.
cutest.
He's like,
And like, it's nice to like all of our reviews aren't really about the tattooing.
No, they're always
It's
like, oh, sick music.
The music's really good, like the vibe's really great, and I'm like, the music is terrible. But
They were just talking about Disney the whole time. Yeah. I love it. It's so good. I mean, I think my parents have finally come around to it now.
Yeah.
But for a long time, do you know what I mean? I just
Oh,
don't think they got it.
When I quit, you know, MTV in order to say, I'm going to quit this very well paid executive level job that I have in London to be an unpaid apprentice, my parents were like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Because they definitely didn't think I was.
Yeah.
They didn't like
cried.
tattoos anyway. They still don't really like tattoos. But they definitely didn't get the idea of like starting again at that point in my life for no money, basically. But as a creative, you have to take risks. So.
100%. Yeah, for sure. Is there a question that you wanna leave for the next guest?
Yes.
You've got a better.
I mean, it's quite on theme for everything that we've talked about, but essentially I'd like to ask the next person what positive change they'd like to specifically see happening in the industry, you know, ASAP basically. What their kind of number one thing that they'd like to see improve or evolve in tattooing.
I like that. I think I've written it down here, actually. I think you also talk about wanting to steer the industry in the right direction. Mention sort of, you're an advocate for tattoo safety.
Yeah.
Yes.
Educating people on how to find the right artist for them. I think we spoke a little bit about that earlier. Staying safe, doing the right kind of research.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about that.
I mean, unfortunately, it comes from like a place of like not very nice trauma, but essentially I want to protect everyone else from going through kind of what I and lots of other people have been through when they are getting tattooed. I think as tattooers, we have to understand that there is a power dynamic in this industry where the second someone emails you, you are in the position of power. You are the one that gives them the booking. You are the one that takes their money. They are the one that comes and sits in your chair. You are the one putting them in pain. Like, it all has this real weird power dynamic. And yeah, I just think it's important that people from both sides understand that, because I don't think people that are getting tattooed understand actually how vulnerable of a position they are in even when you're having a nice experience. It's a vulnerable thing to ask someone to hurt you, essentially.
And mark your body for life.
And to then give you something that you live with for forever. Yeah. And I think that tattooers are very quick to forget the responsibility that we have to keep people safe, to keep people calm, and to give them space to be that vulnerable person. because a lot of the time I think we forget about the person kind of on the other end of it because it's our job.
Well, we don't, but other people might.
No. Yeah. So I think, for me, that's kind of what's really important. And just making people aware that they don't just have to put up with stuff because they paid someone a deposit.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like a lot of the time I've very much been like a yes person when I've been going to get tattooed because I've paid a deposit and I don't want to waste their time and all of this stuff. And ultimately, like, none of us should ever forget that our clients are actually the one with the power. Without them, we can't eat, we can't
nothing.
Rent a space, we'd be nothing. And I just want everyone to remember that and everyone to stay safe and just for there to be a bit more kind of
recognition
safeguarding about the whole thing.
Another quick one about hex cartridges from the Ghost cartridge range. As well as having the unique silicone foregrip system, which is the first of its kind in the UK, they also have the needle configuration on the cartridge body. Really helpful when you're in the middle of tattooing. You can quite easily see which needles that you're using. They're also made from Japanese steel as well, so they're super strong. Make sure you grab these from Star, exclusively at Star, with the code ATFCT10. Is there something that the industry needs then moving forwards? This is maybe, we've had a bit of a conversation about this, and it's like with a lot of the guests, and it's like tattooing is underground. It's obviously pretty mainstream now, isn't it?
Yeah.
So but in the eyes of the government, and we were talking a little bit about like the council's view on it, it's still very backwards. There is still a lot of elements that are unregulated. Of course there are, even though there's a hell of a lot of people getting tattooed. Is there anything maybe that it needs that there isn't now? We talk about like, like a recognition or a governing body for licensing.
I don't think it's that.
And to eliminate scratchers. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, scratchers, please just go away forever. But
then if that happens, would that then bring more negativity into the industry? It's like a very difficult.
Yeah, I
and
think
is it better as it is?
No one really knows the answer, and none of my bad experiences have been from scratchers in sheds. They've all been in like great shops with great reputations, with lots of Instagram followers, and actually, I think that's what people need to understand is actually weirdly kind of the more recognized you get, the more people start taking liberties because they feel like they're indestructible. And actually, I think that if people in the industry started to kind of speak up about behaviours in certain shops or certain artists and stuff, then, and I'm not talking like blasting people online because I don't believe that that's the answer. And also then you just put yourself in the firing line. But I just think if people had more awareness of how they should be behaving, and also if other tattooers were calling people out for their behaviour, then it might change. So like, if we were sitting in a shop and someone was being inappropriate, we would say something. And it might just make that person think, even if they don't agree, that people are watching. And I just think that's the difference. Like, I don't expect clients to do anything about it. I understand that it's like a weird thing. And I don't think there's like an official way to manage that sort of thing. I just don't. There's been talks about like CRB checks and stuff like that, but I'm like, it doesn't mean anything. Like, unless they've already been convicted for something, it doesn't mean anything. Like, nothing
it kind of goes
done.
back to what you, sorry to interrupt, like what you asked me about feminism, basically, or what you asked us about, because to me that literally is that. It's the fact that people need to be much more aware of how to treat other people with kindness, with empathy, and with respect. And if that is something that other tattooers are holding other tattooers accountable for, you're gonna see that change happen, because that's gonna just filter through. I mean,
it starts with the artist.
It starts with the artist. It starts with the community ourselves,
really
and like how we
us.
talk to each other, and how the kind of things that we tolerate and don't tolerate. I had a really weird experience recently where I made a reel that's gone viral on Instagram about a certain way that particularly some tattooers behave in the way that they photograph their clients, and I had a male tattooer message me saying, in support of me, saying, "Thank you so much for saying this. This really pisses me off when I see people do this. It really upsets me, and we shouldn't be tolerating it." And I was like, great. And then he said, "Yeah, I see it in my studio and it really annoys me." And I looked at his profile, and he's the co-owner of a studio. So I'm like, if this is happening in your studio, why are you not saying anything about it? Why are you saying well done to me for speaking out? You literally have it in your power to go, "Look, mate, don't do that. Like, that's gross, or like not acceptable behavior. Do you know what I mean? I'm like, it's individual responsibility.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I think it has more weight coming from another male tattooer than it does us whinging on the internet, which is what I get told I'm doing all the time.
Okay.
Like, I am whinging because I'm pissed off. But like, ultimately, if like other male tattooers were calling out other male tattooers in their workspace and being like, that's inappropriate, she doesn't need to be butt naked while you take a photo of her forearm, then
not encouraging that kind of behavior, especially
then that
not
would change.
Because that is obviously, in our opinion, like one of the main, a lot of the kind of the more dangerous elements that need to change in tattooing do seem to come from like that kind of.
I think social media is to blame as well, and it's almost as if maybe I don't know, because then some people have learned that certain things on Instagram get better reactions. So they think, right, well, if my client is half naked, I'm going to get more views, which means more people follow me.
But equally, if no one was doing it, then it wouldn't matter.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this is it. And it is a society.
Instagram.
Exactly. And it bleeds into society. And this is why it's such a difficult issue.
Yeah.
However, I think
personal accountability, responsibility to the community is what's going to make the change happen.
Yeah, brilliant. No, it's been really good to kind of sit down with you and kind of pick your brains and understand, you know. I think what you guys are doing is brilliant, and I think you're great advocates for women in tattooing. Keep doing what you're doing and keep smashing out.
We do have one guy
be really sad.
Jake.
We have one male.
Okay, fine. Big up, Jake.
Yeah.
Nice.
Shout out Jake. He gets very upset that it's like.
But we want to make space in the industry for people of all genders to have like a good, safe experience and like a fun, positive experience in tattooing.
If people want to get booked in with you, where can they find you? And have we got any kind of conventions and guest spots coming up? I imagine probably you're so busy with the shop at the minute.
We haven't got another convention yet. We do have a website for the shop, the dollhousetattoo.com, which is probably the easiest way to find like mine and Dolly's contact details and everybody else that works here as well. And it's kind of got a bit more info about the shop and how we work.
I am in the midst of trying to organise my diary for a bunch of guest spots, but my life is chaos.
We'd like to take the shop on some conventions because we've actually only ever done Brighton as a shop. But we think maybe going a little bit further afield, like Leeds or Manchester or whatever, just to kind of expand the old client base. And we think it'd be quite fun to have like a dollhouse school trip up north.
Yeah, basically.
Have you got any conventions this year?
We haven't got anything booked out.
Fine,
we've just done Brighton, obviously. And maybe for next year because the shop's still so new. Everyone's still finding their feet.
Yeah, I feel like a couple of the people that work here were like a bit too scared to do Brighton convention, but
definitely
we'll just.
But come to the shop. Come to lovely Brighton. Hopefully, when it's a bit sunnier than today.
Brilliant location as well. I mean, like right in the middle of the lane.
We love where we're at.
Happy days. Good stuff.
Thank you.
The final thing we're going to do is a drawing challenge.
Oh, God.
As you know, we've got a piece of A5 paper. You've got a Bic, you've got a HB, a 2B, and a 1/2 mil fine liner. I'm going to be hitting you with some questions at the same time. And I'm going to give you 3 minutes to draw new school Chihuahua. 3, 2, 1, go.
Oh my God, this is mine.
Screaming.
What's the weirdest dream you've ever had?
Right. Do you want me to tell my Ed Sheeran?
Ed Sheeran dream.
So I have like a really annoying recurring dream about Ed Sheeran.
We really don't like Ed Sheeran.
Who I really hate, and it's annoying that he's just there.
What's he doing in the dream?
So I'm like running through the back streets of India, and I basically have to choose whether I choose letting Ed Sheeran save me or whether I choose death.
Okay.
And it's always death.
Always death.
Always.
Love that. If you could travel to any year in a time machine, what year would you choose and why?
Oh, 1977.
I was about to say 77.
Yeah, for the music, for...
Why 77?
Oh, because Fleetwood Mac,
Fine.
like punk, everything that was happening, Blondie in New York. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, love that. If you could change one thing about yourself, what would it be?
I wish my hair was just naturally this colour.
I wish I was 2 inches shorter.
What's one of the most fun childhood memories you have?
Oh, probably like making up stories and like messing about in my garden with my nan.
Nice.
Wholesome.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I don't remember anything sort of pre-15. Downing a bottle of Lamborghini in the park.
Banging. I think I've probably got a similar memory to that. If you could have dinner with a famous person, living or dead, who would it be?
Obviously Harry Styles.
Harry Styles. Fine. As long as he doesn't give you a quick peck.
No snogging after what we saw
snogging.
this morning. Oh God.
Okay,
Oh, God,
1
my
minute
child's
30
been
left. We're
demon.
halfway.
I've literally drawn a
ears.
cat. I've drawn a cat.
What's your favourite movie to watch over and over again?
When Harry Met Sally.
Oh, probably like Romeo and Juliet, but I turn it off before it gets really sad.
Okay. Biggest celebrity crush?
Harry
Styles.
Harry Styles again. Right. What's your biggest fear?
Death. I think about death all the time, like every day.
Falling from a great height but not dying.
Okay.
Just being horribly...
Dying before I get
Just
to do
like-
everything I want to do.
Fine. God, this is dark. What's a bad habit you had that you've been able to overcome?
Being late, I'm still working on it.
I was going to say, he said overcome.
Shut up, you. So rude.
A bad habit that I don't know. I just sort of let
Also
them
procrastinate.
take over my personality and just let it form a big part of me.
Love it. Favourite food?
Anything Japanese.
Pizza.
Okay. Dream road trip destination?
California, baby.
Yeah, nice. I still need to do that. You got 30 seconds
India,
left.
but I can't really...
Oh, is it looking like a chihuahua?
Vaguely.
Remember, it's got to be new school as well.
I mean, that's asking a lot. That's really asking a lot here. This is barely even a drawing at this stage.
I'm just failing.
What 3 items are on your bucket list?
To do,
Yeah.
become a published author,
Yeah.
go grey gracefully,
Yeah.
trust myself.
Nice.
Like ongoing
Love
thing.
that.
I don't know. I've sort of done it.
Done a lot of bucket
Done it.
lists.
Yeah, smashed it. There you go. There's time up. Put
I've
your
drawn a cat.
pencils down.
I've literally drawn
I
a cat.
mean, what is
I've drawn
that?
a cat.
Let's have a look.
I've literally drawn a cat.
Fresh.
Yours is
Has got a new school vibe though.
Yeah, I was gonna say yours will have a new school vibe. Mine. That's just embarrassing. I was gonna start drawing some leaves around it just to like make a bit of a joke that all I can draw is leaves.
Jokes.
Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much.
Demented.
Oh, but
good.
mine is the picture of a chihuahua.
Right. Okay.
It's been fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been amazing.
Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the episode this week. Don't forget to head over to YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to leave us a rating and a review as well on Spotify or podcasts, wherever you listen to them. Really helps the podcast grow. Massive thank you for all the support so far, all of the comments, and to our sponsor, Ghost Cartridges, for season 2. I'm Alex Lloyd, and this is a 21st Century Tattoo.
She's in like full bin bag apron, arm sleeves,
Midsummer,
mask,
full
visor.
hay fever.
I'm surprised you didn't pass out.